There's a popular idea that love is an anchor, a heavy, grounding force that holds you steady in a storm. For one long, turbulent year, he was my anchor in a storm of my own making. He held the line without complaint, never wavering, while I thrashed in the violent waves of my own confusion and self-doubt. He was, in every sense of the word, loyal while I was lost. But the stories, the fairy tales, they never prepare you for the profound, seismic shock of what can happen when the storm finally passes. The moment I found my way back to the shore, the moment my feet felt steady on solid ground, he was the one who took a knife to the rope. He didn't just let me go. He cut me loose. He betrayed me the moment I came back, and it would take me months of agonizing reflection to understand the devastating, soul-crushing reason why. My life, before the great unraveling, was glossy. That's the only word for it. It was curated, polished, and presented for admiration. From the outside, it was a portrait of modern success. I was Maya Thompson, a rising associate at Pearson Lybrand, a top-tier law firm in downtown Austin. My office was a glass box on the 22nd floor, offering a panoramic view of the Colorado River snaking through the city, a view I rarely had time to actually see. I had the six-figure salary, the wardrobe of sharp, joyless suits, the life my parents bragged about at dinner parties. And I had Liam. Liam was my college sweetheart, the steady rhythm beneath the chaotic melody of my life. He was the kind of man everyone unanimously describes as a rock. Stable, predictable, endlessly kind. While I was chasing a partnership by sacrificing my nights and weekends, he was building a life of quiet fulfillment. He was a high school history teacher at Austin High, a job he spoke of with a gentle, unpretentious passion that I secretly envied. He couldn't possibly understand my world of billable hours, hostile depositions, and the relentless pressure to be sharper, smarter, faster. But he supported it unconditionally. He was the one who'd have a hot meal waiting for me when I'd stumble through the door at 10 p.m., my brain feeling like a scrambled, overdrawn circuit. He'd listen, nodding patiently, his chin resting in his hand, as I'd vent about opposing counsel or a condescending partner. He'd rub my shoulders, his hands warm and strong, and say things like, "What would you do without me to keep you grounded, huh?" At the time, it sounded like love, a sweet, protective joke. Only in hindsight does it sound like a thesis statement. He was my calm, my predictable harbor. I never had to guess what Liam was thinking. His love felt like a utility, always there, always reliable. And for 7 years, I thought that was all I needed. But the gloss, like any superficial coating, eventually began to crack. The pressure at the firm was no longer a motivator. It felt like a physical weight, a lead blanket crushing the air from my lungs. I started having panic attacks in the quiet, sterile conference rooms, my heart hammering against my ribs as I'd stare at a clause in a contract that suddenly looked like a foreign language. I'd sit in my expensive, ergonomic chair, looking out at the glittering city that was supposed to be my kingdom, and feel a profound, terrifying emptiness. It was the emotional equivalent of absolute zero. The breaking point, the moment the dam finally burst, came on a dreary, overcast Tuesday in November. I was in the main boardroom, surrounded by a dozen stone-faced executives for a multi-million-dollar merger. One of our senior partners was droning on about liability clauses. I looked at their faces, these powerful, wealthy people, and I didn't see success. I saw ghosts. I saw people who had traded their souls for stock options, and I just stood up. A strange silence fell over the room. I didn't say a word. I turned, walked out of the room, my heels clicking on the marble floor like a death knell. I went to my office, pulled a cardboard box from the supply closet, and began to pack. My framed diploma, a few soulless corporate awards, a wilting plant. I was a robot executing a final pre-programmed command. I didn't just quit my job. It felt like I was methodically dismantling a life that someone else had built for me. I walked home through the bustling downtown streets, the box clutched to my chest like a shield. The city sounds, the traffic, the sirens, the chatter, felt distant, muffled, as if I were underwater. I found Liam at our small dining table in our Zilker apartment, surrounded by stacks of student essays on the American Revolution, a half-empty mug of coffee beside him. He looked up, his brow furrowing with gentle concern when he saw the box, my tear-streaked face, the utter desolation in my eyes. I opened my mouth, and a year's worth of unspoken misery poured out. I told him I was dying inside, that the person everyone thought I was had been a hollow shell. I told him I couldn't breathe in that life for one more second. I confessed with a terrifying sob that I didn't know who I was anymore, but I knew, with absolute certainty, it wasn't the woman who had just walked out of that glass and steel skyscraper. I was utterly, completely, terrifyingly lost. And he, my rock, was perfect. He didn't question me. He didn't panic. He simply stood up, took the box from my trembling hands, and pulled me into his arms. He held me as I cried, a racking, guttural grief for a life I hadn't even realized I was mourning. When the tears finally subsided into shuddering breaths, he tilted my chin up, looked me in the eyes, and said the words that would become my mantra, my permission slip for the next year. "It's okay, Maya. We're okay. Don't you worry about the rent. Don't worry about a single thing. Just find yourself. It's your only job now. I've got us." He had us. And in my broken state, I clung to that promise like a drowning woman clings to a life raft. The first few months of being lost were a disorienting blur of alien freedom. I burned my suits in a friend's backyard fire pit, a dramatic, symbolic gesture that felt powerful for a moment, and then left me feeling even emptier. I traded my heels for yoga pants and my frantic ambition for a sprawling, unstructured void. I threw myself into the cliché self-discovery tour of Austin. I took a pottery class in a trendy East Austin studio, convinced I could mold my new identity from clay. I spent hours at the wheel, my hands covered in the cool, slick mud, but my creations were always lopsided, pathetic-looking things. They'd collapse under their own weight, a metaphor so on the nose it was almost insulting. I'd look at the other students, effortlessly centering their clay, and feel a familiar, acidic sting of failure. I decided I was a writer. I bought a new laptop and a stack of books on the craft. I'd spend entire days at Bennu Coffee, nursing a single latte, staring at a blinking cursor on a blank page. The silence of the screen felt like a judgment. I was trying to find a voice, but I had nothing to say. I went on long, punishing solo hikes along the Barton Creek Greenbelt, hoping the raw beauty of Texas nature would somehow whisper my true purpose to me. I'd climb to the top of a cliff, my legs burning, my lungs gasping in the humid air, and look out over the landscape, expecting to feel a sense of perspective or peace. Instead, I just felt small and tired. Through every failed attempt, every frustrating dead end, Liam was a saint, a martyr. He'd come home from a long day of teaching teenagers, a job that required its own endless well of patience, and he would sit and listen to my endless, self-absorbed monologues. He'd hear about the philosophical implications of a kiln firing, or my struggles with the first-person narrative, or the specific type of bird I saw on my hike. He never once interrupted. He never once looked bored. He never once mentioned that our savings account, the one I had meticulously built, was now steadily draining to fund my journey of unemployment. He was my cheerleader-in-chief. "That's a great mug, babe," he'd say, sipping his morning coffee from a lumpy, misshapen thing I'd made, a testament to my lack of skill. "You're such a natural writer," he'd encourage, reading a single, overwrought paragraph I'd agonized over for a week. He was propping me up, holding my hand, telling me I was wonderful even when I felt like a complete and utter failure. I was so deeply submerged in the murky waters of my own psyche. My life had become a one-woman show, a drama of epic proportions. It was all about my feelings, my future, my identity. I was the star, director, and producer of this film, and he was the ever-present, ever-supportive supporting actor whose only role was to facilitate my performance. Have you ever been there? So lost in the labyrinth of your own head, so consumed by your own narrative of struggle, that you can't truly see the people standing right next to you? You see their support as a resource. You accept their help as your due, but you don't actually see them, their needs, their fatigue, their own quiet, internal changes. I didn't see it. I didn't see the way his smile would tighten at the corners when I'd talk excitedly about a new hiking trail I wanted to discover alone. I didn't notice the slight, almost imperceptible hesitation in his voice when he'd ask about my day, as if he were bracing himself for another long, rambling report from the land of Maya's feelings. I was taking his loyalty for granted. It wasn't a conscious act of love to me anymore. It was just a feature of my environment, like the sturdy dining table or the air I was breathing. It was just there. The shift began subtly, about 8 months into my self-imposed exile from reality. I was volunteering at a local community center, a last-ditch effort to feel useful. My job was to sort through boxes of donated books in a stuffy, forgotten storage room. One afternoon, I pushed aside a stack of dusty encyclopedias and discovered a door. It led to a beautiful, neglected space at the back of the building. It was large and airy, with high, pressed tin ceilings and a wall of tall, arched windows caked with years of grime. Dust motes danced like fairies in the shafts of afternoon sunlight, and in that quiet, forgotten room, an idea sparked. It wasn't a fleeting interest like pottery or writing. It wasn't another attempt to find myself. It was a real, tangible fire, a bookstore, not just a store, but a community space, a haven, a place where people could gather, not just to buy stories, but to share their own. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I felt a surge of genuine, electrifying purpose. The fog began to lift. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about creating something for others. It was about building. I went home that night a different person. I was buzzing with an energy I hadn't felt since my first year of law school. I laid out the whole vision for Liam, speaking faster than I had in months, my hands gesturing wildly. I talked about restoring the original floors, about building shelves up to the ceiling, about hosting local author nights and poetry slams. He smiled that same patient smile. He nodded. He said all the right things. "That's amazing, Maya. That's a brilliant idea. I'm so proud of you." But something was off. The light of pride in his eyes didn't seem to reach his soul. It was like he was watching a compelling movie about a stranger, one he wasn't really a part of. I brushed the feeling aside. It was a phantom limb of my old anxiety, I told myself. He was probably just shocked by my sudden intensity after months of lethargy. I was finally on the right track, and that was all that mattered. Over the next 4 months, I was no longer lost. I was a woman on a mission. I buried myself in research at the public library, learning about small business management. I drafted a meticulous 60-page business plan. I practiced my pitch in the mirror until my voice was hoarse. I met with the community center's board, and to my astonishment, they loved the idea. They offered me a generous lease agreement. I took my business plan to a small local credit union, and after a nerve-wracking presentation, secured a small business loan. Every day was a concrete step forward, a brick laid in the foundation of my new life. I was painting walls, sanding floors, haunting flea markets for furniture. I was coming back to myself, piece by piece, not by thinking, but by doing. I was becoming a person he could be a true partner with again. I was becoming strong. The day I signed the final lease papers and picked up the keys was the best day of my new life. I stood in the empty, cavernous space, the set of old, heavy keys in my hand. The cold metal felt like a promise, a tangible piece of my future. I was no longer the broken woman who had stumbled out of her corporate job. I was a founder, a creator. I was whole again. I stopped at Central Market on the way home and bought a bottle of expensive champagne, the kind we saved for major anniversaries. I practically ran the last 2 blocks to our apartment, my heart thrumming with a joy so pure it felt like it might burst from my chest. I couldn't wait to see his face, to tell him that his loyalty, his unwavering patience had paid off. I was back. The woman he fell in love with, but better, stronger, complete. I burst through the door, my face aching from the sheer force of my smile. "Liam, you are not going to believe—" I stopped dead. The words died in my throat. He was standing in the middle of our living room, surrounded by cardboard boxes. They weren't my old boxes from a year ago, filled with the artifacts of a dead life. They were his books, his records, his history, our history. The joyful energy evaporated from the room, replaced by a cold, heavy silence. The champagne bottle suddenly felt impossibly heavy in my hand. What's going on?" I whispered, my voice sounding small and foreign. "Maya," he said, and his voice was so gentle, so full of a pity I didn't want, that it felt like a physical blow. "We need to talk." That's the sentence that ends worlds, isn't it? The 4 most terrifying words in the English language. He told me he was moving out. He told me he was so proud of me for everything I had accomplished, for finding my passion. But he couldn't be with me anymore. He'd fallen out of love. He said the distance between us had grown too great while I was gone. I felt the floor tilt beneath my feet. "Gone? Liam? I wasn't gone. I was right here. I was in the next room. You were the one who told me to do this. You held my hand through all of it. You said you had us." My voice cracked, rising with disbelief. "I know," he said, and he finally had the decency to look ashamed, dropping his gaze to the floor. "And I meant it at the time. I swear I did. I didn't want to burden you with my feelings while you were going through so much." Burden me? The word was a slap. Burden me? The irony was so thick, so suffocating I could have choked on it. He had shouldered the entire financial and emotional weight of our existence for a full year, so I could have the incredible luxury of finding myself, only to decide that I, the person he was supposedly doing it all for, was too much of a burden to share his own heart with. It was a logic so twisted it made my head spin. Then came the final, quiet blow, the one that shattered everything that was left. "There's someone else," he said, his voice barely audible. "Her name is Sarah. She's a substitute teacher at my school. It's been going on for a few months." A few months? The words echoed in the cavern of my mind. I did the math, my brain clicking with the cold, horrible precision of a clock. A few months. It was the exact same period I had been building my dream. While I was waking up at dawn to draft business plans, he was sending secret good morning texts. While I was mustering the courage to meet with the loan officer, he was meeting her for coffee after school. While I was painstakingly laying the foundation for what I thought was our future, he was systematically, methodically dismantling it. The man who had been my rock, my anchor, my unwavering, loyal supporter. He had been a perfect partner when I was a chaotic, self-absorbed, emotional mess. And the very moment I became whole, the very second I came back to him with a full heart and a clear future to share, he betrayed me. He left that night. He was efficient, organized. It was clear he'd been planning this for a while. The apartment, once our cozy, cluttered home, became a cavern of echoes and ghosts. Every empty space on the bookshelf screamed his absence. His side of the closet looked vast and empty. I lay in the middle of our bed and could still smell his scent on the pillows, a phantom limb of a life that had been amputated without my consent. His support, which I had thought was a gift, now felt like a strategic, elaborate lie. His loyalty hadn't been unconditional love. It had been a loan, and the interest was my entire world. The weeks that followed were a special kind of hell. I had to open a bookstore, a place I had dreamed of as a symbol of our shared resilience and future, now felt like a cruel, bricks-and-mortar monument to my failure and his deceit. My best friend, Chloe, was my lifeline. She was the one person who didn't offer platitudes. She'd come over with takeout tacos and a bottle of cheap wine and just sit with me on the floor while I cycled through waves of grief, rage, and profound confusion. It was during one of those nights, surrounded by greasy paper wrappers, that she said something that planted a tiny, sharp seed of doubt. "I don't know, Maya," she said, swirling the wine in her glass, her expression thoughtful. "And I never said anything because you were so fragile, and he was being so good to you. But did you ever feel like I don't know, enjoyed you needing him? Like, really, truly got something out of it?" I recoiled at first, a reflexive defense of the man I thought I knew. "What are you talking about? He was amazing. He saved me." "I know," she said carefully, holding my gaze. "He was. But it was the way he talked about you to other people, to me, to our friends. It was always, 'Poor Maya is having such a hard time. I'm just trying to be her rock.' It always felt like a performance. There was a certain heroism to it, a role he really, really liked playing." Her words haunted me. I replayed the last year in my mind, but this time, through this new, horrifying lens. His constant reassurances, his gentle pats on the head, his insistence on handling everything. Was it possible? Could his selfless support have been, at its core, a selfish act? It's a horrifying thing to realize, isn't it? The possibility that someone might not love you, but they love the idea of saving you. They love the power dynamic that your pain creates. They thrive on being the strong one, the needed one, the hero of the story. The final brutal confirmation came about 2 months later. I was at a cafe in South Congress, a place buzzing with life and creativity, scouting for a local coffee supplier for my bookstore. And I saw them. Across the patio, half hidden by a large, leafy fiddle-leaf fig. Liam and Sarah. My first instinct was to run, to hide. But my feet were rooted to the spot. I couldn't look away. I watched them, a voyeur to the wreckage of my own life. He was looking at her with that exact same patient, adoring, gentle expression he used to give me when I was at my lowest. And she was looking up at him with wide, teary, dependent eyes. She was talking animatedly, gesturing with her hands, a slight frown of worry etched on her young face. She looked overwhelmed. She looked lost. She looked exactly like I had a year ago. And in that moment, as he reached across the table to pat her hand with that familiar, patronizing comfort, I understood everything. The final puzzle piece of my grief clicked into place with a horrifying, soul-shattering clarity. The betrayal wasn't that he fell for someone else. The true, profound betrayal was why he fell for her. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a project. He didn't want an equal who could challenge him and stand beside him. He wanted someone to rescue. I had been his project for 7 years. At first, I was the high-strung, ambitious lawyer he had to calm down and ground. Then I became the lost, broken woman he had to support and save. I always, always needed him. My weakness, my chaos, my need. That was the glue holding our relationship together. The moment I didn't need him anymore, the moment I found my own strength, my own purpose, my own solid ground, I became useless to him. I had graduated from his care. My recovery had made his role as a hero redundant, so he simply found a replacement project. Someone else to be a rock for, someone else to save. I walked away from that cafe, and I didn't cry. For the first time since he left, I felt a strange, cold sense of peace. The pain was still there, a deep, resonant ache in my bones, but it was no longer a confusing, chaotic pain. It made a terrible, tragic kind of sense. My bookstore is called The Next Chapter. I cringed at the name at first. It felt too cheesy, too cliché. But now it feels right. Because that betrayal, as devastating and defining as it was the violent, messy end of a chapter. It was not, I realized, the end of my story. He forced me to build my dream alone. He forced me to sign contracts, lift heavy boxes, and face terrifying financial uncertainties by myself. And in doing so, he accidentally gave me the one thing I still hadn't found on my own. The undeniable, irrefutable proof that I could. I didn't need a rock. I didn't need an anchor. I was the whole damn mountain. He betrayed me the moment I came back, and in that act of cruelty, he taught me my final, most important lesson. A person who needs you to be lost is not a partner for the journey ahead. They are just an anchor, holding you in a place that serves them, disguised as serving you. And sometimes, the only way to truly be free, to truly sail into your own future, is to cut the rope yourself. The question I had to learn to ask myself, the one that recalibrated my entire understanding of love, is one I think we all should consider. Are the people in your life celebrating your strength, standing in awe of your growth? Or are they, in quiet, subtle ways, just profiting from your weakness? Think about it. Really think about it. The answer might just be the beginning of your next chapter.